Welcome to Civil Clarity Reports, everyone. I'm one of your three hosts, John Noel, along with Marty Espinosa and Jody Kirk. On today's show, we will be interviewing Mr. Russell Meyers, who is running for president in 2024 as an independent. You can find out more about Mr. Meyers' campaign on his website, rmyers2024.com. Mr. Meyers, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing very well.
How do you feel about the environment and the environmental concerns with greenhouse gases, solar cells, windmills versus petroleum, natural gas, that kind of thing? Where do you stand on that?
I'm very much, in favor of environmentalism. I think that we do need to cut back on fossil fuels. For one thing, they're finite. Yeah, we can't wait until everything runs out. And then try to build up new technologies. I think, we need to expand solar and wind power. But I also think that especially solar needs a lot more development. I think it's not as efficient as it could be. Solar energy was developed in the 1970s or before, and it has gotten better than it was. But I would fund major universities to do more research to try and make it more efficient. There are problems with storage of energy from renewable energy. Those batteries, well, you're running into a lot of other issues when you're talking about all the lithium. I would want to fund sodium research into sodium ion batteries, which China is doing research on. I would like to see cooperative research with other countries for these things, because this is a global issue. So we should be working together on those things. But sodium ion batteries are more, recyclable and don't cause the environmental damage that lithium does. And there's a limit to how much lithium there is. The more we use it up, the faster we're just going to run into the same problem there. We need to keep on developing new technologies and improving what technologies we have.
What about nuclear energy?
That's exactly what I was going to ask, is where you stand on nuclear energy.
I am in favor of nuclear energy. But again, we need to keep a limit on that, and we need to develop safe, we can't have another Fukushima or, something like that that is happening. We can't build nuclear power plants on fault lines, and sooner or later.
I'd agree with that.
They do that on the fault line primarily because it gives them the thermal energy to run their fans. I studied that at one point where they were building the nuclear plants. They purposely build them over fault lines because there's a crack in the earth and the earth is hotter right there. And they'll drill tunnels down that will turn around and run turbines that run the pumps that keep the nuclear energy cooled off. So that way, that's their fail safe. Should anything happen, those will continue to run and keep it from melting down. The problem is if you have an earthquake, that's where it gets you, because now your thermal energy isn't running the turbines anymore because they're damaged.
So, I don't even understand why you would want to do that if you've got that much thermal energy. Then just build a thermal nuclear plant. So why do you need the nuclear aspect to it at all? If you've got that much heat, that much energy, then just use that to produce the energy. You don't need to add radiation on top of it.
I would agree.
You know, at the very least, we have some, you know, storage for nuclear waste. But again, that's even if we're storing nuclear waste, we're kind of kicking the can down the road for future generations. They're, you know, worst case scenario, at some point, you know, the nuclear waste sites get you know, forgotten about, and then somebody in a future generation is digging, and what kind of problems do they run into from that? You know, we've got the massive nuclear waste disposal site right there in New Mexico.
Right.
And that has run into problems. They ran into problems with that while I was living there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, nuclear is a good stopgap, but we need to keep developing other forms of energy to move away from that as well.
Russell, speaking about nuclear.
Yes, sir.
Will you stand with Israel if something pops in the Mideast?
Again, Israel needs to be holding peace negotiations with Palestine. Israel does not admit to having nuclear weapons, but it's estimated that they have at least 200 nuclear warheads. You know, there's the talk about Iran, but there's no evidence that Iran has nuclear weapons or that they're developing any nuclear weapons. We need to, instead of supporting one side or the other, we need to act as mediators. Instead of being reactionary, we need to try and prevent problems.
Okay, so let's suppose that doing all those preventive measures doesn't work. They are currently, I think, under threat, and I think they will be attacked eventually, and maybe soon. Should they be attacked, and by several of those countries and those dictators that are there, and if you were president, would you help them?
I would help them if they were directly attacked. But I would have to say that they need to be acting in, you know, their own best interest in the form of diplomacy, not just us standing, you know, propping them up. You know, we're giving them what, $4 billion a year. You know, so I would tell them that they need to, you know, hold more diplomatic talks. They already had diplomatic agreements with Saudi Arabia, but you know, if they're attacked, yes, I would definitely stand with them.
Okay, because I don't think Islam's going to give them a break, no matter what. That's not the way Islam works. It's you either convert or they kill you. That's exactly what they're saying about them. They either want them dead or convert.
That is Islamic extremism. But as far as the you know, the Muslim faith, that is not what is in the Quran. You know, the fact is that Jesus is mentioned 25 times in the Quran by name, and every time with respect. You know, so
well, they know, they say he's a prophet, but they say he's not divine, and that's the problem there, because there is no other religion that they will accept, and that's why Israel's in such danger And I believe that myself that we should stand with him no matter what. Diplomacy has not worked in how many years ever since never worked. It won't work with them because that's not what they want there. They want complete. They want the Jews out of there, or they want them to convert to Islam. And so that's why I'm asking you that, because I think the next president is going to be facing that. I think the Mid East is going to pop. I think there's going to be a lot of problems there. And I think China is moving in, Russia's moving in, especially China. China's making contact and diplomatic ties with lots of countries now that they had never spoken to before. And so I think if you become president, you, sir, are going to be inundated with so many problems and issues, not only within the United States, but throughout the world. And I think that I wouldn't want to be in your shoes.
Which brings about another good question, Marty. How would you deal with China when it comes to Taiwan?
Taiwan is recognized by virtually every country on earth as being part of China. We don't really have anything to do with Taiwan. That is something that should be dealt with internally by China. If it goes further, then it needs to go to the UN, not to us. That's not our responsibility. Us pumping weapons into Taiwan is not going to help anything. If there's all this talk about China's going to invade Taiwan. If China invades Taiwan, I don't see how a country invades their part of their own country. This is something that needs to be addressed diplomatically. Pumping weapons in is not diplomacy. If we tried responding to that, every study that has been done by the Pentagon has predicted that we would lose quickly, decisively, within days. You think that they're on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. There's only a few miles distance between China and Taiwan, but we would have to cross, 1,000 miles of ocean, and, our ships would be just targets. You take out our ships, there's nothing else. What else are we going to do?
I don't see them as much as targets as we've already got fleets in that area. Taiwan, the reason we're protecting that is because that's where all of our chip manufacturing comes from. So if we lose Taiwan, we lose all the chips. Say bye-bye to the cell phone, say bye-bye to the cars, say bye-bye to everything that's got a chip in it.
Well, but if there's a conflict, then, we're not going to be getting those chips anyway.
Right. That brings about overregulation by our government, which has forced the chip manufacturers out of this country in the first place.
That was capitalism that did that. That was the corporations that sent all the manufacturing overseas.
Yeah, but that came from being overregulated.
Maybe.
When you're overregulated and overtaxed to the point it's costing you more to make the chip than you can get for it, you're going to move to where the labor's cheap. You're going to move to where the equipment you're going to be getting is cheap, because that's where it's being made, is in China in the first place. And you're going to set up camp there. You're not going to have to pay the taxes that you paid here. And that started with the Clintons. Basically, they started throwing in heavy regulations on all of our chip manufacturers. And slowly but surely, one by one, they left our country and either went to South America or to Taiwan or to China to manufacture the chips that we use in our computers and our cars and our cell phones and all the stuff that we use.
Right. But there has been no threat to the microchip supply. As far as it is, you know, we've been receiving all the computer chips coming from there. So again, I mean, 40% or 45% of microchips that are produced globally are produced in Taiwan and mainland China. 25% from Taiwan and 15% from China. Producing microchips also takes rare earth minerals, 80% of which comes from China, and another 5 to 10% comes from Russia. So if they decide we're not going to sell you rare earth minerals, then good luck making microchips at all.
Well, that comes down to regulations here again. We've got, I believe it's in Kentucky, there is supposedly a lithium mine up underneath a portion of a national park there. But because it's a portion of a national park, we'll never be accessing that lithium. There's supposedly enough lithium down there to turn around and build an electric car for everybody in the United States. But because of the regulations and the way they're set up, we're not mining the stuff here. We're allowing them to mine it elsewhere in the world for us. So we're giving over our power to those individuals. Because
we're also forcing the environmental, complications regarding
burdens on them
onto other countries.
Right.
So, that's, but as far as, Taiwan is concerned, this goes back, further than the microchips. If we've been getting the microchips, that's really not a threat. China has not threatened to cut off the microchip supply, but they could. And if tensions keep on rising, they will. And then what are we going to do? So it really needs to be handled diplomatically, but it's not our business. Even if we sent our forces over there, the Taiwan Strait is too shallow for our submarines. So we wouldn't be able to do that. Everything on the surface would be a target, and submarines can't go through the Taiwan Strait. There's no hope with that. It needs to be handled to predict things. I don't have any problem trading with China. But we've heard all this stuff. It's always vague claims. Well, China is, disrupting trade in that region, but then we're not given any evidence on it. It's always just vague scaremongering. If you can think back to anything that China has done, they haven't blocked off any waterways, any trade routes.
No, but they do throw up a threatening posture every time we send a diplomat over there, and they express the attitude that it's ours and you stay away from it. And if you continue to try to help them with their democracy and stay in a free state, that we will step in and take it back, and you won't get anything. So yeah, it's a threatening stature that they take when it comes to dealing with us, when it comes to Taiwan and us getting our chips from them.
We would have the same approach if some other countries started putting weapons and supporting the separatism of Hawaii or Alaska. We would have an intimidating approach as well. There aren't any Chinese vessels that are along the California coastline or in the Gulf of Mexico, but look how many U.S. bases and ships are just completely lined up along China's, eastern coast. And it doesn't stop at the eastern coast. I mean, basically, China is encircled with our forces,
Right.
Which we've got over 800 military bases.
Well, we've become the
outside.
peacekeeper of the world. So,
Yeah.
we've got bases in just about every country on earth.
I'm not seeing a lot of peace that we're involved in. Every time we're involved in peace, it involves weapons. I actually would prefer, especially with the cost of our defense, which I'll get to in a moment. But you think about how much it costs to keep those bases. I think that our foreign bases should be, shut down, bring our forces back. I believe in a strong military if we are attacked. We need a strong military, but we haven't been attacked.
But aren't those bases necessary for early detection?
No, not if other countries are actually our allies, Japan, Australia, Europe, etc. Yeah, early detection of what?
Of invasion by people like Russia, China.
Well, if we really need to, with modern technology, and transportation, if we really need to be anywhere, if our forces need to be anywhere in the world, our forward forces can be there within hours. Major forces there within days. So why do we need to maintain 800 military bases? If you consider just one military base, just supplies for one military base, you can consider it probably costs about $1 million a month for one base.
Easy.
Right. That's just for supplies. That's not counting, the salaries of the military and civilian personnel. That's not counting the equipment and the fuel for those bases. So now you've got $800 million a month times 12 months. And that's a very conservative estimate. And then you throw in the fuel, the vehicles, the weapons, the salaries of all these people. And that goes way higher than $1 million a month per base. Now, as far
one of the things, though, that we're looking at, to kind of go along the lines of military readiness, though, is the fact that, to kind of bring it to the, to the domestic side of that issue, is that we're having huge recruitment problems right now. We have, if I read some statistics correctly, about 70% of young people ages 18 to 24 wouldn't even meet the criteria for military service. I think what you're seeing right now is, me being a veteran myself, and I know you are too, Russell. Mm-hmm. I have seen, I think we're seeing a dismantling in so many ways of our armed forces that, though I agree with you, our presence around the world should be decreased. However, there is a huge concern that while other countries are beefing up their military, especially China, who has well over 1 million infantrymen alone, and we don't even nearly match them in terms of a readiness beyond our saving grace, in all honesty, is probably nuclear weapons themselves. I think without nuclear weapons, the amount of nuclear weapons that we have, we'd probably be sitting ducks for China and Russia right now. I think that's kind of our saving grace, because the readiness, the willingness of young people, especially, it's one of the reasons why the recruiting age has gone up. for the military. When I went in 1993, it was 35 was the cutoff, and now it's 40, maybe even 40 plus. So how do you address the problem of the threat that China does pose wanting to invade Taiwan? Because I think we would know that if that did happen, they're not going to stop there. And would we even be ready on a front to even deal with that threat with the way our military, the direction of our military is going right now?
Well, Marty was saying something about the democracy. No, I'm sorry, that was Jody. Democracy in Taiwan. The fact is that Western polling of Taiwanese showed that, about 90% of the Taiwanese people do not want to separate from China. That is something that, again, this is a CIA operation that's going on there. And pumping weapons into it isn't going to help. We need to address it from a more diplomatic perspective. And is it our business at all? My microchips that we would lose in the event of a conflict isn't a justification for becoming militarily involved, because it's self-defeating. As far as our military readiness, well, if we aren't maintaining 800 foreign military bases, then we don't need as many people, but we could have, a strong military force in case we need it. The thing about my view on a lot of this is, when we talk about like the funding for our defense, every time you hear, okay, it's $870 billion for our defense budget now, that's not our defense budget. That is the Pentagon budget. If you really want to calculate our defense budget, you would have to toss in the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the VA, Department of Homeland Security, and upgrading and maintaining the nuclear arsenal, which is $100 billion a year and accounted for separately. When you add all that together, we spend more on defense than every other country on Earth combined. And yet every year we seem to be less and less safe. China was not increasing their military force until we started arming Taiwan. The past 2 years have been the first time in decades that they were increasing their military budget. For 3 or 4 years in a row, Russia actually decreased their military spending until last year. So, that's why. And yet, if you just use the Pentagon budget, if you combine the next 11 countries' budgets together, we still spend more than them. And we're not any safer for it.
So I disagree. I think we are safer for it because we do have a nuclear entourage. We have deep water submarines, nuclear subs. We've got battleships that China doesn't have anything to actually even equate to when it comes side by side. When it comes to our forces, I don't think we can be beat when it gets down to it. When it comes down to a nuclear war, I don't think there's going to be anything left but sticks and stones to throw at each other if it goes to that.
All right.
I don't ever want to see that, or them even talking proliferation of limited nuclear wars. That to me, that's just absolute insanity.
Right.
So, but when it comes down to a non-nuclear war, when it comes down to it, I think we pretty much outgunned just about anybody on the planet.
Okay, but we don't need to be all over the planet at all times. It's just costing us money. And even when I was in the army in Germany in the 1980s, there were protests outside my post every weekend. People that did not want us there. They saw us as occupiers. And that's the way many people in many countries view us. They view us as occupiers.
Right, but you'll find that in every country that we go into. If we've got a base there, you're going to have a small portion of that population that considers you an invasion force. Just like when we had the UN here, back about 10 years ago, we had a force of individuals from both Russia and China. One of them posted in Alamogordo. The other group was posted here at Kirtland Air Force Base, and they were members of the UN being trained here. We had people coming out and protesting the fact they were here because they were conducting military operations on our land. They weren't doing anything out of the ordinary. This was a UN exercise. It had already been pre-approved. But the people here came out and protested against them. They wanted these foreigners off their shoulders. So you're going to find that no matter what country you go to, there's always going to be a group that's going to protest the fact that you're there, whether you're there to help them or whether you're there to occupy them. Either way.
Yeah, but there's a difference between training with other, forces and keeping a permanent presence. We don't have any German or French military bases here. So we can't, nobody can claim that they are occupying us. The more that we keep our forces in other countries, the more at risk our own enlisted people, our own military people are. While I was in the Army, we had 3 different bomb scares, and two of those, a bomb was found. That is a risk.
Oh, yeah.
So the more, like I said, our forces can be anywhere in the world. Forward forces within hours and major forces within days. We can sure send our equipment over to Ukraine. But
the reason we can have those. Hang on. The reason we can have those forces there within a few hours is because we do have those people on those bases around the world. If they were all over here, we couldn't get them from here to anywhere on Earth in just a couple of hours.
Why
it
not?
Would take.
I mean, I'm talking about, I'm talking about jets.
It's what, an 8-hour flight from here to England?
Okay.
So you're talking like, okay, in a couple hours, we can have 10,000 troops anywhere on Earth. You can't do that unless you've got troops already there. Moving that many troops that fast is going to take an outrageous amount of resources. So
I have some that
resources there.
I have some to add to that. For every base, Russell, that we abandon or leave, I believe, this is my feeling, that China will move into that base. That's what I think. And I think that we live in a very dangerous world, and people being what they are in history kind of backs up the fact that it's a very dangerous world at any time. And I think America took the role of what Jody said earlier. We took the role of peacekeeper, and I think that dictators are born every day, and I think that what we do is good for the rest of the world. I agree with you on the CIA part of it, though, that they did step into a lot of countries and they created a lot of problems for us. And they opened the doors for a lot of what they used to call the ugly American to go in and do what they do. And that's the people you're talking about, the corporations. But I think we need to be out there, especially now. And yeah, we feel safer? No, but that's because we're imploding from the inside here in America. We're imploding from the inside. They don't need to come in to get us. All the ideas and all the philosophies and all the people with the radical ideas are running amok in our country, and I think we need those bases out there. So I'm still out. I can't see anybody.
Well, one of the things that, I mean, if anything, would you consider the fact that, under Trump, he was the first president in 40 years, over 40 years, to not get us into any kind of a new conflict around the world? Would you say that was a successful approach that he had in terms of, while not necessarily decreasing the defense budget, but nonetheless along the lines of what you're advocating for about our involvement in other places? Is that something that you agreed with?
Yeah, I think that was a positive thing. I think that it was positive that he met with, North Korea and Russia, and those were things about him that I absolutely cheered for and supported, even though some people did not like me for doing so. But, that's very much my point. We need to increase diplomacy so that we don't need all the weapons. As far as what is going on with China and Russia, they are expanding their diplomatic ties and trade across not just the Middle East, but also Africa. So, I mean, China is building the Belt and Road Initiative, which is not a military structure. There's some military guarding part of it, but not very much of that. So that's expanding trade with other countries. And now there are, if you've heard about the BRICS alliance, there are more and more countries. The original BRICS started in 2001. It was Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then South Africa joined that later on. And these countries are more and more trading with each other and bypass in native currencies and bypassing the dollar altogether, which is going to cause the value of the dollar to plummet. And now there are 19 more countries that are talking about joining into the BRICS alliance. Now they can be part of BRICS and SWIFT, but the more that they are trading in their own currencies, the more the value of the dollar is degraded against other currencies. So at some point, we're going to start seeing the effects of that with extreme hyperinflation at some point. As long as we are still adversarial, that's going to be a problem. If we instead improved our diplomatic, connections with these countries instead of trying to dictate to them, then it would be less likely that the dollar would decline drastically. But no matter what, these countries they're already set on moving away from the dollar. And the BRICS, the next meeting of the BRICS leaders is in August. And a lot of people are saying that they may develop a BRICS currency for international trade with each other.
So do you believe in digital currency?
I think it's going to happen no matter what. I do not believe that we should eliminate hard currency. Not at all. I think we should be able to maintain, hard currency. But, what the central banks around the world are going to do, that's a different thing. Of course, we could mandate that we keep a hard currency. Some people don't even have bank accounts. And
How do you feel about ESG when it comes to the banking systems trying to institute that?
the what?
ESG, environment, social governance. Most of the big banks have taken that up and are trying to institute that.
No.
How do you feel about that?
No, yeah, you're talking about like tracking your carbon footprint. No, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. And that we are going further and further toward fascism every day, and that's part of it. And they're watching absolutely everything you do. Of course, they're pretty much watching everything you do anyway.
Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody about, what was it? Aldi's. And of course, the next thing you know, I'm getting hit right and left with ads from Aldi's.
Well, thank you very much, Russell. We will look forward to part 2 of this interview on Tuesday. And until then, please take care.
Oh, you do the same. I've enjoyed talking with you guys.
Thank you, Russell.
Thank you very much, sir.
Well, everybody have a good night, then.
All right. Be safe.
All right.
Good night.
Thanks. Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
That's a lot of